Good evening. I'll bring the City Council meeting on Monday, January 27th, 2025 to order. And for the record, we have Vice Mayor Anduri is not going to be in attendance tonight, but the rest of the council members are present. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, so the agenda is adopted. Do we have any public comments for closed session item in the audience?
Mayor Kendall, we have no speakers in the Don Tatson Community Hall, and we have no hands raised in our Zoom participants audience.
Great, so we will retreat to go to our closed session. We'll be back here at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
CJ, we're ready to record.
Welcome back. We are back from our closed session with no reportable action. Right off the bat, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And next, we'll have public comments for items not on the agenda. So if you have something to say that is not on the agenda tonight, please submit a public speaking slip. Do we have any comments?
Yes, we do, Mayor Candell. Our first speaker in the Don Tatson Community Hall is Steve Poling.
Hoping not to be first, but here we go. Good evening. My name is Steve Poling. I am the new leader of the Lafayette DEIB committee. And I just want to take a few minutes this evening to give some thanks and a quick update on the committee. First off, I'd like to thank Janet Thomas. We know Janet is a tireless advocate for social justice and a dedicated leader in the community in many ways. In October, after I agreed to take the lead of the committee, Janet shared her time, her resources with me. I'm very grateful to her advice on how to move this committee forward. I'd also like to thank the city council members, the city manager, Naroop, and city administrator, Jennifer Wakeman, who also took time to meet with me. Their insights on how to collaborate with the city are greatly appreciated, and their support for our work is also very heartening. Earlier this month in the town hall lobby, we met for the first time in person for quite some time. And special thanks again to Dennis Markham for letting us use that space and for hosting. There were 21 of us, and some of the townsfolk have been here longer than I have been alive. A few have just moved into the committee, so it was a really great group of people, diverse in terms of age for sure. We met to discuss our vision, which has been the same since 2021, and we look forward to meeting every other month in that same capacity as more of a formal meeting, not necessarily in that same location. I also want to say that the members of the committee, myself included, were really pleased to see the city council pass the calendar of proclamation last meeting. That official recognition of the diverse racial, ethnic, and cultural heritages and the full spectrum of gender identity and sexuality sends a really strong and positive message of affirmation and support to the people in our community, especially those who feel threatened by the latest spate of dehumanizing pronouncements at the national level, most of those pronouncements not representing the general view in this community. The committee looks forward to using that calendar to help guide our work throughout the year. Finally, I'm very grateful to the dozens of Lafayette residents who continue to meet and talk with me. There is a beautiful diversity in this community. There is a strong desire to build trust and human connection. And there's a real momentum to continue pushing for changes that create systemic equity and a more loving community for our kids, our families, our neighbors, and ourselves. To wrap up, I just want to share a couple invitations. These events are free and open to all residents of La Marinda. On Saturday, February 1st at 9 a.m., we're going to host our first community walk. We hope to have many of these throughout the year. We're going to meet at the Lafayette Moraga Trail right across from Stanley Middle School. And these walks are just a chance to enjoy some fresh air, to meet some folks on the committee, and to share what's on your mind. Friends, family, dogs, neighbors, all welcome. Finally, to honor Black History Month, the committee is hosting a book club on Thursday evening, February 27th. The exact time and place will be determined once we know what our totals are. We're going to be reading and discussing, The Message, the latest work of nonfiction by National Book Award winner Ta-Nehisi Coates. And there is information and the chance to register for that at Reasonable Books downtown, who are helping us out. That's over by Trader Joe's. And on the city webpage, thanks to Suzanne, who's put a Google form up there for people to look at. That's where we're at right now. I hope to consistently give you updates throughout the year, and thank you for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for taking over that committee. Does anybody have any questions? Appreciate all the work that you've put into that committee. Very, very wonderful. Any other public comments?
No additional public comments at this time.
Okay, so I did prepare something for this. We've just been really getting a deluge of emails from concerned residents about the fires in LA, and just wanted to have a way to reflect and have a statement go out. So I worked with the city manager and Suzanne and came up with this. And I just wanted to say, I stand with you, my fellow Lafayette residents, as we recently watched the devastation from the wildfires in Los Angeles with disbelief that a single event can destroy entire communities almost overnight. Our collective hearts hurt for them, and I know that many of us are figuring out the best way to help however we can, and I thank you for all of your efforts. Our city has helped directly when our emergency services coordinator, John Cornell, was directly asked by the LA County Fire Department to bring a specialized anti-drone drone system to help identify rogue drones flying over the fire zones. He traveled to Los Angeles and set up the system and trained them to use the drones before returning to Lafayette. Contra Costa Fire also sent reinforcements to Los Angeles to help with the fires, like so many districts across the state, including firefighters and equipment from Canada and Mexico. It's truly been a spectacular show of mutual aid to fight these fires. More importantly tonight, I want to assure everyone that our entire city council, our city staff, our emergency preparedness commission, the police and fire departments, and all of the first responders from our region we are acutely focused on wildfire safety. We are watching and learning from the devastating fires in Los Angeles, as the health and safety of our residents is our #1 priority, and we will remain diligent with our efforts to protect our residents. We will continue to periodically reevaluate our own plans to include lessons learned from other communities, and we'll continue to work closely with ConFire and our Emergency Preparedness Commission to ensure that we maintain strong evacuation plans. For information to help you get your own home, your family, and your pets ready for emergency evacuations, we have a dedicated webpage at lovelafayette.org/ready. Please visit this website and get all of the information you need to prepare yourself for possible emergencies and evacuations. So we are all in this together, and the better prepared we are, the better our response will be. Thank you all again so much for everything you're doing here in Lafayette and also helping the wildfire victims in Los Angeles. Thank you. And if anybody else wants to say something on this, feel free, or not.
I'll just add, we did bring, thank you very much for that comment. And we were discussing this in terms of definitely working with our neighbors and fellow stakeholders in terms of emergency response and fire prevention. So you'll see more of that activity and collaboration in the short run for long-term gains.
Thank you.
If I could chime in.
Yes.
Mayor Kendall, I really appreciate your comments. I think they're spot on. And I think there's many people in the community, this is all top of mind for us. We had a Firewise Steering Committee meeting in my neighborhood. We had a great turnout. And I think everyone's sort of focused on how do we at best mitigate the risk that we face here, along with our neighbors in La Marinda. So it's top of mind. And I think that's a great assurance to our community, and thank you.
Welcome.
I'll just kind of close and say, yeah, absolutely cannot concur more. I think I want to echo, I think working with Orinda and Moraga and making sure we're all working together, it makes it, we'll talk about this later, but last week I was at the Cal Cities, conference for council members and mayors, and just listening to all the cities around. This is mostly Northern California at this point. I mean, just the fear that we're all dealing with in the unknown and trying to figure out how do we do better and be smart about what we do. It's palpable. So I think it's great. The leadership we can learn, take, and also any lessons we can learn, super important. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right, we have our city manager's update.
Good evening. This is a quick update from the various departments. From engineering, we now have a pavement condition index, or PCI, in the high 70s due to all the maintenance work we've done over the past few years. we're now taking a hard look at what projects we should be doing in the next few years. We've hired a consultant to help us select the most cost-effective street projects moving forward, and we will share this with our Capital Projects Assessment Committee and with the City Council. I know it's too early, but we've started weed abatement already, and there's been an overwhelming number of calls for helping people tackle that. The Senior Services Commission has finally approved their draft age-friendly plan, and they will be bringing it to you at an upcoming meeting. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay, what about any public comment?
No public comments?
Great, thank you. All right, presentations. We have a celebrity in the room. Our own Congressman Mark DeSaulnier is here. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for that. And thank you for taking us up on the offer. I've done this for a long time, since I was a county supervisor. And it's just nice to get feedback. And also, since I started as a city council member, these are better jobs than the other ones. Like Tip O'Neill said, right? All politics is local. So, Carolyn, we're going to go ahead and do a brief PowerPoint. You can tell I've got a cold. I wasn't sure that I was going to make it, but I got some miracle pills a little while ago. So that's our current district. It's the 10th. I used to be the 11th. They go from the Oregon border first down numerically to the Mexican border. So in the old one, I represented Lafayette. I represented you in the state legislature, in the Senate. The old one had the 80 corridor and didn't have San Ramon and Dublin and didn't have all of East County. So they moved me this way and then down. So I've also represented those because I've been around a long time in other offices. I was surprised to see a colleague from Ohio, Marcy Kaptur, who's the longest serving woman in the House of Representatives, gave me a list of all the congressional districts, and I did not know that. I knew we were this number, I knew we were well-to-do, but this is the 5th wealthiest district of the United States for household income. So, yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I think the old one was like 25th or something. But it says something about the Bay Area and the 680 corridor. Anyways, so next. So this is my staff patting me on the back here. One thing I'm proud of and my staff is we are the only, there's only been 4 offices in the Senate and the House to get recognized twice by the Congressional Management Foundation. It's a nonprofit that helps offices with management procedures. And they've recognized us for innovation and constituent outreach. So I'm proud of that. And they've been doing this for 60 years, I think. And we're going to try to get another one. Right, Janessa? Right. Next. Both of these committees, I've been on the first 2 for quite a while. I served on these committees I served on the Labor Committee in the legislature, not on the Education Committee. In Transportation, I was just sort of going away for Luella Haskin. They were talking about TransPAC, and I was like, oh my God, I can remember going to TransPAC meetings. But those are the committees I'm on. I'm the ranking member. The 2 areas where I've spent most of my interest, particularly in Congress, is transportation and behavioral health and mental health. I have a very large bill that I got out last session, Mental Health Matters Act, because since the passage of the Affordable Care Act, where the Congress gave parity to physical health and behavioral health, there's been a 300% increase in people asking for it. Unfortunately, there's been a similar decrease in people going into the field. So we have some great programs in the Bay Area, the Wright Institute, Berkeley, and UCSF. So that bill is meant to take all this great research we're getting right now in this country about how neuroscience works. And is that a shot of gin? No, it'd be rum. It wouldn't
Never
be
admit
good.
it.
Vodka. I sound like an old bar owner. So it's those are the two subject areas I put a lot of time in. I was asked by the current leadership, and I was flattered by this, to serve on the Ethics Committee. I'm the senior Democrat. On the Ethics Committee, there's 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and we get along really well. We had to deal with George Santos and Mr. Getz, which was quite interesting. One of my great accomplishments in Congress was you're not allowed to tell anybody what happens. It's like a grand jury when you're in session. So I did 3 national TV interviews, and I think the one on MSNBC was my favorite, because we told them, he said, you know, I'm just warning you, I'm not going to be trying evasive, I can't. So when I got through, the interviewer said, well, he didn't say anything, but then again, he said a lot. I'm like, that's really cool. Okay, next. So this is the main reason I'm coming out. We'll work with your managers, the county administrators, school district managers. 6 years ago, when we were in the majority Democrats, the former speaker and Rosa DeLauro, the chair of the Appropriations Committee from Connecticut, they started these programs again. So they used to be earmarks. And they put a lot of protection in because we didn't want to have the abuses that we used to. But it works really well when it works well, because who knows better about their district than a member, provided they're not giving money to Uncle Fred and there's performance standards. So we've been really, really fortunate here in Contra Costa and Alameda. The former chair of the Transportation Committee and Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro both told me in the first round, you had some of the best applications of anybody. And I think it's because of this area, that we've got great public managers, and they were ready. So we've been able to do this here in La Miranda. The Safe Street program, of course, has gone on for quite a while. I think that was started when I was a county supervisor. And of course, we've had some issues here, so that was a great thing. And then the smart signal system, I'm very proud of this. We almost have the entire county money to upgrade their streetlight system for the best available technology. So software is increased. So CTA will be able to work with all of the city's public works departments. So the whole system will be managed in a way that I'm not aware of anyone else in California who will be able to do it like us. So every streetlight will be into Highway 24, Highway 4, Highway 680. So you'll see the difference. We started this years ago on Ignacio Valley Road and San Pablo Road when I was a county supervisor in MTC, and they were called routes of regional significance. So the technology, like so many things, has improved so much, and it's more affordable, that I'm really excited about this. And Contra Costa Transportation Authority is fabulous to work with as a former member. All right. So again, this is just putting it on your radar screen, because things are so odd right now. We really don't know what this is going to be like, but when the Republicans in the majority, they were really good too. I was nervous. Got a lot of Republican friends. Current speaker's office is around the corner from my old office. And the current chair of appropriations, Tom Cole, is a very good friend. We served in the Rules Committee, and we both like American history. So I'm hoping that we'll keep doing what we did. They made it harder to do for nonprofits. They wanted public agencies. So that's another reason why I wanted to come and talk to you, so we're ready. So we're going to have a workshop, and we'll continue to work with your staff as we find out more, because they'll probably change some of the direction. I hope they just don't eliminate it. I just heard at Lola's retirement that a couple of our nonprofits in Contra Costa have been notified that they're going to stop getting checks, which is illegal. But we're going to be spending a lot of time adjudicating these things. But we'll be prepared as always. So $46 million in the districts, in this district, the 10th. And most of it has just been the partnership with the cities, the county, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and nonprofits when we had control. And also on the Labor Committee, one of the committee that I'm the senior, used to be the chair, I'm the ranking Democrat on, is the HELP Committee, Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions. So that has jurisdiction over all those things, including job training. So when we tried to reauthorize the Workforce Investment Act last year, we got it out of the House, and then the Senate didn't take it up, so we'll be doing that again. So that's the thing that generally is pretty bipartisan. It's just, different parts of the country have different needs in terms of career tech and training. But we have a great board here. Next. So since you just talked about this, I have met with your chief, both Confire and Arinda Moraga, multiple times over the years as they've turned over. We're very fortunate to have had really thoughtful administrations in both. And I don't know where I was reading, you probably saw it, maybe it was in the Chronicle. There was a story about the Pacific Palisades of the Bay Area, and fortunately, this is it. So dealing with our beautiful, beautiful, fabulously beautiful area that we all get to represent, but it has some challenges in this environment when it goes to weather. So we want to keep working with you. Again, we don't know what the administration has in mind for FEMA, but we're willing to work with him. Another good friend, Peter Welsh, senator from Vermont, who served with me, he's on one of the committees of jurisdiction, and he had a story, I think, in the New York Times today that said, I'm willing to work with the president, let's make it better, let's not eliminate it. So hopefully. Drum roll. That's it. Happy to take any questions.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for showing up. And I'm sorry you don't feel as well as you typically do, but.
Good, I would have gone on for another half hour.
That's too funny. Do any of my peers have any questions?
No questions, but deep gratitude for all that you've brought to our area and to our city in particular. And even getting hands-on at the Hillside Memorial. It's really meaningful, your contributions. Thank you.
Louise Clark would come down and tell me. Most of us have had Louise Clark in her lovely way do that. God rest her soul.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your perspective from, national headquarters. A question for you is, it's early in the game in this new Congress, but with respect to some of the major Biden initiatives like the infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and so on, do you see any movement to sort of retreat from that or underfund that?
Yes, unfortunately. A wonderful project. The 680 corridor improvement was $166 million. I lobbied Secretary Buttigieg. Nancy Pelosi lobbied him. I think she had more influence than me, but and it was approved. But we were really racing to get everything done, and unfortunately, God bless federal bureaucracy, we didn't finish it. So it would be, from a legal standpoint, very difficult to do. But unfortunately, we just had a hearing in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee last week, and the administration was making signs. And I think, this is my own editorial comment, I think the current president is a little jealous that we got this done when he wasn't president, because he tried. This is the largest investment since Eisenhower was president. It's really quite transformative. $1.2 trillion. For every one job, 14 jobs. So it's and for us, this is a great project, the 680 corridor. And it's really an example of smart mobility along with the other things we've done. So it's a concern, to be honest, and we'll find out soon. We're gonna, unfortunately, be spending a lot of time in court, is my feeling. I just had that conversation with Jamie Raskin, who's the chair of the Judiciary Committee's constitutional lawyer from Harvard. And I'm like, Jamie, I know none of us thought this was going to happen, but are we ready for this with all our partners? Because we're going to be adjudicating a lot of this. Most of these are contractual relations at this point. Or I think the funding that was mentioned with the nonprofits here is CDBG funds. Well, having been on a governing body on the County Board of Supervisors for years, I think Richmond's the only one that has its own CDBG funds. Once you get it approved, you can't take it back. So the fact that they're actually stopping checks. So it's going to be, I hope that people like Tom Cole will be able to persuade him that this isn't the way to govern. And you can be conservative, you can be passionate, but, rules are rules.
Great, yeah, good.
Great. I add my thanks to actually being here and representing your long years of service. We do appreciate that. And I appreciate, I think just keeping us in the loop too about the funding requests. We all hear the nightmare from Oakland, they missed their, didn't even submit, something that they could have applied for, but just weren't in connection. So I really appreciate, I'm really confident in our city leadership, but your leadership at this level, I really appreciate that. I also want to say, we have a lot of our citizens that are very scared right now. And, we don't know, it sounds like you don't know either really what's going to happen. So I guess we're all counting on you to fight the good fight and let us know what we can do to help fight the good fight, because we're all in it together and we just have a lot of community members. Not just, you think about in Lafayette and, 2 areas, richest, but, all the workers that work in our businesses, that just, help all of us, just work every day and make our city run. There's a lot out there. So whatever we can do to help you, you please let us know, because we're in it together.
Okay. Well, since I'm in the Don Tatson room, my favorite Republican, I say that to all my favorite Republicans, having been a Republican at one point. It's just these partnerships. I've been lucky and not fortunate enough to serve at multiple levels of office in this beautiful place. And we really have a great, we're family, so it's not like we don't have differences sometimes, but we really are remarkably fortunate for the electeds and the managers, not just the city managers, but department heads. We've been very fortunate in contrast for all the years I've been in office. There's always been one city, it seems like. It used to be the Murphy's Law. There's always one that's having trouble and it would move around. You've never been that way.
We'll try to stay off your naughty list.
Well, that wasn't me. That was just everyone.
No, oh yeah.
I think that came from Dan Bornstein. Why is there always one?
No, thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll get our grants right and ready. We've got a couple that I'm sure go right off the top of my head that would be really helpful for future planning for our city as we try to get, and grow like we are supposed to. And, but to grow safely and carefully is really important. So anything we can do to help with, any of the response for fire service or anything, if you need anything from us, obviously ask. Yeah, we'll be there and give you as much information as we possibly can.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will go on to presentation B, Duncan Seibert. Is he, I don't see him in the audience. Okay. Sure, yeah.
Jennifer, I'm allowing you to speak, and CJ in the back will allow you to share your screen.
Great.
Sounds great.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for your understanding as I present from home due to illness. Tonight, you have before you the fiscal year 24 annual comprehensive financial report. This report is the 5th report prepared by our audit firm, Badawi and Associates, and marks the last year of their contract. The Finance Subcommittee reviewed and discussed the report with the auditor at their meeting on January 15th. Badawi and Associates have issued an unmodified or clean opinion on their audit of the city's financial statements, so the best result you can get from an audit. All of the city's financial highlights can be found in the management's discussion and analysis section starting on page 5 of the audit report. The most important thing is that the city continues to be in a strong financial position. When I looked at the fiscal year 24 financials to highlight some significant items, the thing that most jumps out at me is that it was kind of a return to a more normal operating year. All of the variances had to do with one-time significant transactions that happened in fiscal year 23. For example, in fiscal year 23, we spent $1.3 million in ARPA funds, whereas in fiscal year 24, we spent $95,000. So you didn't see the impact of the ARPA expenditures in the fiscal year 24 financials like we did in fiscal year 23. In addition, we had two property purchases last fiscal year, the police department and also 986 and 990 Moraga Road. So those also had significant impacts on our fiscal year 23 financials, which you don't see in fiscal year 24. Lastly, something changing the balance sheet significantly was compliance with GASB Statement 87, which required us to put long-term lease commitments onto our financial statements. And that comprised the Desco City Office lease, which put $2.5 million asset and $2.5 million liability on the statements. If you turn to page 34 of the financials, I just wanted to highlight that the general fund is very strong. It saw revenues of $22.3 million and expenditures of $18.8. So last year, the general fund had $3.5 million more in revenues than expenditures. So I just wanted to highlight that as a sign of the city's intention to be frugal, to try and watch because we were anticipating the deficit, and to highlight that for you. This report was submitted on December 31st for the Government Finance Officers Financial Reporting Award. And since this is the last year of the audit contract, I will be going out for a request for services for auditing, for an auditing contract, and I'll be returning to put that on consent probably in 6 to 8 weeks. That's the update I have for you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go take questions. Councilmember McCormick.
Thank you. Actually, your last point was good because I had a question about our auditors. Do we have a policy of cycling to different auditors periodically, or can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so we followed the best practice issued by the Government Finance Officers Association, and that says that we enter into I believe it's a 3-year contract with two 1-year options to extend. And that requires us to rotate audit firms, or more specifically, audit partners. So we could potentially have Badawi rebid this contract as he has other partners within his firm. But for complete transparency, and I prefer to just contract with a new firm to make sure that we get complete separation, complete new set of eyes, and make sure that we have that separation there.
Great. Thank you. No, it was phenomenal. I think it just shows a great conservative approach to finances, which we all appreciate, especially having solid reserves given what may happen. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No. Go ahead.
No questions, a comment later.
Okay, sounds great. There was one thing that we did talk about in our, Vice Mayor and Dury and I did meet with Jennifer, and is it in 2026 we might have zero debt? That was like all of our outstanding debts would also be removed, like in the next either year or 2 years?
Yes. And on July 15th of 2025, the city will make its final payment on the general obligation bonds that were issued for street repairs in 1995. So the city will be debt-free at that point.
How many cities do you know in the state of California that are close to debt-free or will be debt-free? How many are there, you think?
I have no idea. Probably Jim has a better idea than I do. But especially without our pension liabilities.
Right, with no pension liabilities.
Right. We
We're
continue
unicorn.
to be a unicorn in the areas of liabilities with regard to most city financials.
Yes, thank you. Okay, any questions, public comments?
Mayor Candell, I have no public comments at this time.
All right, so now any comments? All right, Councilmember Cervantes.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Kendall. Actually, I had 3 things. The first is to pick up on a point you raised, which is with respect to the July 15th, 25 final payment on what was originally the 1995 general obligation bonds, which were sold to enhance the roadway system for the city and arterials. And I wanted to just hit on that for just a second because our city manager noted earlier that Our pavement condition index, or PCI, is in the low 70s, which is actually great. And it got there because the community voted to tax themselves, to invest money, to improve the road system, and then through the diligence of staff and prior councils, we maintained it. So I kind of wanted to highlight also that these are 30-year bonds. It goes back to I think 96. But they will be gone in a few months. And that's the way the cycle works. Communities invest in infrastructure, and over 30 years, which is just a blip in the time frame, they're gone, and the facilities remain, especially if they're well maintained. So I wanted to highlight that point. The second is maybe a couple of observations. One is that, like Jennifer did talk on this, but in the audit, there's this from the Governmental Finance Officers Association, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is really the gold standard for public agencies in terms of how they report their finances. And all the well-run cities, counties, special districts have this, and we are one of them. So I wanted just not to let that pass, because it's important to note that we're getting top caliber work here. And I think the audit just one showing of that. And then the final point I wanted to raise is that Jennifer is not just serving the city of Lafayette, she is also the president of the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, or the CSMFO, which is an organization of about 2,000 professionals in California, of pretty much, I think, every single city, most of the special districts, and most counties. And so there's one person who's sort of running that organization in a given year, and our Jennifer Wakeman's that person. And I wanted just to highlight that because I think this goes to show that we have individuals working on staff who are investing their time, not just in serving Lafayette, but there's a broader community of public agencies throughout California, and frankly nationwide, that we engage with. And Jennifer is our point person on this. And I think she's done a terrific job. So I just didn't want to let that go, because I think there's acknowledgement worth making there. It's a big job, and I think it needs to be acknowledged, and I wanted to do that. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, Jennifer, you're just the rock star. We know it. We also get to have you here in Lafayette. Thank you for sharing your time with us, I guess,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
for the kind
basically
comments.
where I wanted to go. This is the 9th year that we've won that award that Jim mentioned. And that almost directly aligns to how long you've been employed with Lafayette. You're longer here, but thank you so much. I had the pleasure of serving on the Finance Committee as mayor last year, and just firsthand, you being able to answer the questions to the very detail has always been amazing. So kudos to you and Tracy for all the work you do for the city and keeping us in line and keeping our spending in line. And of course, to all who work with you. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, and thank you so much. If you look around at other cities, their financials just simply don't look like ours. We are really in good shape, especially after passing our half-cent sales tax. We are in substantially better shape than most other communities around. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for all the work in getting us there.
Just
please,
briefly,
one
sorry
more.
about that. No, because
Yes.
you just bring up a good point, because again, the conference last week, we were talking to, hundreds of cities, and they were really stretching like, boy, can we hit a 15% target for our reserves? And some cities say, well, we can do 7.5% reserves, and we'll do 7.5% under maintenance, which kind of works like reserves. And the fact that we're sitting at 60 or higher, especially with the passage of Measure H, is just a testament to the way we run things around here. And it will serve us well, there is no doubt. So thank you very much. And I think it's just important, again, just to note how special Lafayette really is.
All right, thank you. Any news? No? Okay.
Now, do you want to just receive and file his report?
I think we shall receive and file his report. Thank you. All right, we'll go to the consent calendar. Do we have any items we want to pull from consent? No, do any members of the public want to pull an item from consent?
Mayor Kendall, I have no requests to pull an item from the consent calendar.
Sounds great, so
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
A second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're unanimous, thank you. I will now go to the staff report for the Campana property.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take a moment to explain, give you the background information and explain why we are here today. Back in 2012, first of all, the Campana property is located just south of Mount Diablo Boulevard on Moraga Road. It's part of the Plaza Way overlay. And in 2012, we created I would say, a mini-specific plan for that area, and the vision was to activate revitalize the buildings along Plaza Way because it's really the place where Lafayette was born, and to allow people to enjoy Plaza Park, shop and dine at the businesses along Plaza Way, and to provide a consolidated parking lot, the rear of the buildings, with access from Moraga Road all the way down to Golden Gate Way. We required that the owners opt into the overlay, and if they did so, we would not impose upon them our current parking regulations, which were onerous for buildings with or properties of very small size. We did get one of the property owners, the Poi family, opted into the overlay. We worked with them, and today, Plaza Way, even just looking at the Poi properties alone, is just a wonderful place to be. We have Sideboard, and we have the other businesses along the road. So we've been waiting over the years to expand that parking lot behind the buildings on Plaza Way. And back in 2022, two properties came up for sale within that block, the Campana property and the McNeil property. And so the city council authorized staff to negotiate a purchase. We were able to successfully acquire the Campana property, but our negotiations with the McNeil owners, it didn't pan out, and we did not purchase McNeil. The intent for the council had not made a decision in 22 as to what use to put on the Campana property. There were a wide range of uses discussed. A parking structure, retail, housing, city offices. There were a whole slew of options, but the city council did not engage in deep conversations about it. Around that time, state law changed, and the significance to Plaza Way was there was a parking law that said within a half mile of the BART station, the city could not require impose a minimum parking requirement. If the property owner were willing to provide parking, that was their call, but jurisdictions couldn't impose or require a minimum amount of parking. That, in essence, put our vision of providing this consolidated parking lot in jeopardy because our vision required that the buildings behind Plaza Way, the buildings behind the buildings on Plaza Way would need to be demolished in order to provide the consolidated parking lot. So we were faced with, we had acquired the Campana property, but we were now faced with this new law that would make it very difficult to achieve that vision. The City Council appointed an ad hoc committee to discuss what should be done with the Campana property. That committee today is comprised of Councilmember McCormick and Councilmember Andore. Very recently, we have been approached by a potential buyer who is interested in purchasing the Campana property, and it's our understanding using the existing or keeping the existing building. Given that, the subcommittee had a series of meetings, and is recommending that we initiate the first step in the disposition of the Campana property. Since the property is publicly owned, we have to go through a long process to declare it surplus. The process for properties over half an acre in size involves reaching out to housing developers and also getting permission from the State Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. This property happens to be under half an acre. It does not require a lengthy process. What we would need to do is to adopt a resolution and declaring this as exempt surplus. We would need to file this with HCD, or the State Department of Housing, and we believe that we meet the criteria, and we believe that HCD will grant us permission to call this property exempt surplus. So the subcommittee and staff are recommending that the City Council undertake the first step to declare this property exempt surplus. This does not require you to sell the property immediately, but it clears that first step needed to put the property on the market. Should you decide to market the property, please direct staff to draft a resolution declaring this property as exempt surplus, and we will bring that resolution back to you for adoption, and then we will submit it to HCD. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you for the excellent report. Do you have any questions?
I think I'd just like to just provide a little additional just commentary before we do that, if that's right, just as being part of the subcommittee, even though Vice Mayor Anduri isn't here. I think it's important to note that both Vice Mayor Anduri and I went into this project disappointed, right, that we could not realize the vision, right? And we all wanted to really just improve and realize the vision that we had for the historic overlay, both changes to parking laws and changing actually to housing and what you have to do with if you demolish existing housing and rebuild at other places, just really seems to make it untenable. So I think it's important as we kind of go through this with the questions, that this was clearly not in place when the city purchased. So that's important to do. But otherwise, I think we find this, just to kind of add on to Niroop's point, was we're not actually saying it will be sold. We're just kind of trying to eliminate barriers, because if you engage with the market, we need to be able to respond as quickly as possible. And so I think this is just a prudent step. It doesn't preclude anything. And that is, we're not saying anything in specific is going to happen, but we just want to keep our options open. So just with that,
Thank you.
So just a question, this was, recommendation was predicated on that there was interested buyer, not that we're pursuing that, but that this discussion was predicated on the buyer coming forward, potentially?
Right, we were actually, this was, the committee was formed and we were active before anything happened. This was actually already in kind of motion. This is probably something we should do to, just given the realities of just being kind of trying to get the best use of the property, and the interested buyer, who we've not really dealt with other than just for interest, kind of spurred us. Okay, this is the right first step, so we can at least figure out what the options are.
So we had looked at this, and we were concerned when this first came before, right as we established the subcommittee, was to figure out like how much it would cost to get this thing into a good shape, safe shape initially. In terms of just using the excess parking as it is now, let alone anything with the building. So is there, just as out of curiosity, is this a, I don't know if this could even be followed up, but is this a person who's interested, as you said, in the leasing the current building as is? And,
That's my understanding. They've been dealing with Tracy, and she indicated that it's a professional office.
Okay.
And they were looking at the current building.
Would we be responsible for those if we were going to sell it anyway, despite?
I just wanted to interrupt. The process to declare it exempt surplus does not allow us to negotiate with any particular purchaser until we go through the process and get HCD approval.
That makes sense.
So there's been very limited discussion, but it has spurred the, do you want to actually go
forward.
through this process and then potentially market the property for sale?
Right, so any other questions I would have going down this way would come later?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank you, Mayor Kendall. I have an indirect question, which is, I guess, this is purely anecdotal, but whenever I've gone to Sideboard, I have not had a problem finding parking. But has there been any assessment, like if the idea was to use this site to facilitate parking for that area, which I agree is the heart, if you will, of the community, is there adequate parking away from that? Or like, I'm just kind of curious if that's been studied or looked at all.
We did when the Plaza Way overlay was created. We looked at the potential for parking within a quarter mile or walking distance. They are limited, and for the longest time, there was no parking need on Plaza Way because everything was either boarded up or, so there wasn't a parking need at all. We also discovered that even if we applied our parking regulations to all the uses we wanted to see, like restaurants, theaters, cultural activities, those have higher parking requirements than pure retail. So the area would be greatly impacted if we didn't come up with a way to provide some level of parking behind the buildings. We have 2 public parking lots within walking distance, 949 Moraga Road and the Oak Bridge parking lot, but that's it, in addition to on-street parking.
I can actually offer just a little extra context too, because if you talk to the owners of Holly's Homegrown, who was there on the corner property, who's not there anymore, parking for her customers was challenging. So I think if there's only one business open potentially on that street, it's okay. But as soon as you get 2 or 3 businesses, we also have the opening of the Park Theater, which is targeted for mid-2026, which will, I think, not only have impact with what the theater brings in, but also there'll be presumably ancillary businesses that will come in because of the extra traffic. So it will be a challenge. There is no doubt if we don't, without realizing that parking. I agree, right now, we're actually okay, but it doesn't take much to figure out what the challenge will be in the future. So that's why it's, again, disappointing we couldn't realize the initial vision.
Good.
City Manager Srivatsa, Patrick Ollier is working on a parking survey, correct? That's later or mid-year? When is that anticipated?
It should be, he started work on it already, but the public meetings are going to be in February and March. He wants to complete the study this year.
Great. And City Manager, you mentioned that if we get this resolution and sign it, there's not a limit of how, like, we don't have to sell it within a certain amount of time. What other limitations might exist if we do this resolution?
So after you do the resolution, we'd submit to HCD. They, in theory, would then respond back and say, we agree it's exempt surplus. You could then market the property. Let's say you have a change of heart and you decide you want to keep it and see the vision at some point in the future. You could do so. And there's no requirement to sell it or no requirement to offer it up to affordable housing groups. So at this point, the way the law is currently written, you could go through that process and then not sell it, and then at some point, maybe a couple of years down the road, change your mind and remarket it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
No?
No, thank you. Any public comments?
Yes, Mayor Kendall, David Clark here in the Community Hall, and if anyone in our virtual audience would like to speak, please raise your hand now.
Thanks. Dave Clark from California, Lafayette. I submitted some comments, and you've probably seen those. I'm fine with those. We don't have to go into those. But subsequent to my submitting those comments, Jeff Gilman got in touch with me, and I've talked to Will Elder as well. So the comments I'm about to make, I am a member of the Creeks Committee, as you know, but the comments I'm about to make are mine, and it's not anything that we've taken action on with respect to the Creeks Committee. But there's a anticipated trail would parallel the Lafayette Creek, which behind the Park Theater, for example. The intent is that it's going to march that direction at some point in the future. We allowed for that in the rain garden. There's access there. We allowed for it with a potential easement behind on the other side of that property. So I think it would behoove us to plan for that now and perhaps consider adding an easement across whatever part of this property, the Campana property, might be usable in the future for an extension of that trail. And if you look at I'm not sure exactly where that is. I think we need to take a look at. We have to take a look at it at some point anyway. But I'd hate to see us move forward and preclude that from happening when we've got the opportunity to do something with respect to that now. And I think that something would probably be just the way the building is laid out and the way the parcel is laid out. It's probably going to be a strip across the southern part of that parcel. And how wide that needs to be and those kinds of things, well, the city can figure out. But I think now is the time we should consider adding that easement while the city owns that property so that it's in place as we move forward. I don't think that would result in a huge diminution of the value of the property. I mean, we're not talking about, but anyhow, I would strongly suggest that we look into that, the provision of an easement, the creation of an easement across the southern part of that property with the idea that that's a potential for where that trail may go at some point in the future.
I have a question.
Thank you. Question?
Is that on the Creeks plan?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'm glad Jeff's keeping in touch.
Yeah, I meant to say,
Thank
it
you.
is in the Downtown Creeks plan.
Yeah, I remember seeing that with some of the theater
In the back.
documents that came through at the time. So thank you for bringing that up to us.
Yeah.
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 Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yes, we have Grace Dixon, and it says Grace Dixon and Steve Hall. Grace, will you be speaking alone, or is your husband joining you?
It is just Grace Dixon, sorry. I didn't change the title of, this is his computer. So everybody can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I did understand the logic of acquiring the land, and I supported it at the time. I do share in the disappointment that the vision could not be achieved. I do support the declaration, and I'm speaking as a private citizen. I do support the saying that it is surplus land. But I do have some suggestions and questions. The first suggestion is, do we know that indeed the building on the property is salvageable, habitable, not going to be declared that it needs to be torn down? If it does, and the owner, the supposed buyer backs out, is there an open to listen that the building could be torn down and used temporarily while the city owns the land as a temporary park site and or parking site? I understand that this land is very valuable. It is in the heart of Lafayette. I do support it as housing as well. And I do understand the Surplus Land Act states that we need to prioritize affordable housing, parks, and open space. This land is in the heart of senior housing and ages 0 to 15 who cannot or do not drive any longer. So I want to prioritize those uses. I understand that the city needs money. I would like to say that I support a myriad of uses for that property, but knowing, and I'm a neighbor to Madison that is currently up for sale again because the cost of building is so high, and I spoke with them again last week. The cost of building is so high that they put it up for sale again, that they're not going to build on that property. So if that indeed happens at this property, and if the building is deemed not salvageable, that we could better utilize that property, at least in the short term, to serve our community better, that would be my hope and my wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grace. So the property you're talking about for sale again, that's the one right across from the library, right?
Right. That was just an example of property that, yes, there were grand plans, But now the cost of building is so high, so if somebody bought it and or the city bought this land, if we could, it is land that we've owned now for some time. We could make good use of that land on the short term and then still sell it. Doesn't mean we can't sell it. I'm just saying, anyway.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Any other questions? No, thank you, Grace.
Mayor Kendall, there are no additional speakers at this time.
Okay, great. So the recommendation, this is what staff put in the report. Should the council decide to market the property, it should direct staff to draft a resolution declaring the property located at 980 Moraga Road as exempt surplus land under the Surplus Land Act, return to council for adoption, and submit to HCD for approval. So do I have any thoughts on direction that the council is going?
I think it makes sense in terms of, I too am disappointed. I know we had that grand plan of the McNeil property, the Campana property to come to fruition. That did not happen. And under the circumstances, it doesn't sound like this is if there's potential that we can consider for other options for this, then it would be good to lay the groundwork for it. So.
Sounds great. Councilmember Cervantes?
I guess I look at this as an option to allow us to sell the property. So if the city chose to do that, provided we jump through the hoops with HCD and so on. I think for me, I mean, I know that's a down the line kind of a question. I think I'd want to understand the parking issue better, especially with respect to
Sure.
Park Theater and so on. But that's a down the line kind of discussion.
Correct.
I would support the idea of having the option at least, and then we could figure out what to do with that option later.
Sounds great.
Agreed. Yeah, that's clearly what we'd like to do is keep our options open, and this is a expeditious way to do it. So,
And I also agree. So do I have a motion? Or would we just direct staff? Do you want to vote? Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're directing staff
Yes.
on their recommendation.
Yes. So do you make a motion? Yes?
Oh, okay, I'm making a motion to direct staff to, what are we going to do? To declare the property as exempt surplus land under the Surplus Land Act and basically get that ready.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We are unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for bringing that to us. When would we talk about adding an easement, as in David Clark's suggestion?
That really, if you decide to market the property, I think that would probably be the time to note that this is the property and there's an intent to place an easement on.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right, so council and commission reports. Do we have any? Okay, Councilmember McCormick.
All I want to say is I've mentioned a couple times, I don't mean to belabor it, but the event last week with all the other cities, I think.
Why don't you explain what the event was?
So briefly, it is a event put on by California League of Cities. It's for new council members, or sophomore council members in my case, and new mayors and city managers come together. And there's one in Northern California, one in Southern California. The one in Northern California was last week. And we met, there were council members and the mayor of Orinda and Walnut Creek there also. Moraga, I think, is going to the Southern California one. And we heard, and it was interesting, there were plenty of very worthwhile sessions about financial management, ethics, just dealing with land use and and a lot of things that are on the top of mind of cities of all sizes. Particularly notable, I think it's worthwhile, is there were obviously, city council is nonpartisan. And clearly there are cities from all over Northern California that certainly span the gamut of partisanship, and there are a lot of common issues, many more things in common than that join us together and in advocacy. So it was quite useful. A couple of things I do want to mention, I happened to touch on them that was notable, was clearly our financial situation is incredibly solid compared to many of our peer cities, or all cities, frankly. Other things that other cities are dealing with, which are just heartbreaking, with homelessness and lack of water and things like that. We are fortunate enough that it isn't really top of our minds, so I think we should be cognizant of that. But the most important thing, and this is just a shout out to my fellow council members and our city staff is the cities where it was just heartbreaking was just the dysfunction on some of the councils, right? Where you have one or two members that just are in opposition, cannot work together, just are at cross purposes, and nothing gets done. Or there's such turnover with city staff, city manager, department heads that it's just everything is just paralyzed, and the job is hard enough. And what we need to do to serve our cities is hard enough. The fact that Lafayette just works so well as a council. We don't agree on everything, but we have the best interests of the city at heart, same with city staff, just professionalism. It just made me appreciate once again what a special place we are, and thank you to the council and to staff for such a great, for making the city such easy to work with.
Oh, thank you for the report. Any other reports? I don't have one either. Okay. We will go to written communications, namely from some nice people from the chamber here tonight. So we have a request for a bunch of upcoming events from Executive Director Sarah Regan from the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce and Brad Crane from Sustainable Lafayette. And there are 7 items with different dates throughout the city for all of our fabulous events that we have throughout the year. And so we would like to approve all of these events unless anybody has any questions or concerns. Did you want to speak? Oh, good. Okay. Sounds great. So do we have any questions? No concerns. Any public comment?
Mayor Candell, we have no public comments on this item.
Sounds great. I am sure I'll get a very quick motion here.
Can I make a quick comment?
Of course you can.
I'm sorry. This is just a shout out to the chamber and, Sustainable Lafayette for these string of just great events. I mean, it's always just a highlight just to be able to walk around, sample food from restaurants, maybe have a glass of wine. But I think this is just such a special thing. I just wanted to note that, I enthusiastically support this. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, we have a delightful.
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second, and I would have followed up. There's a lot of work goes into this planning, obviously. These little, one-page letters for these events, which takes so much of preparation. Like you finish it, and you're on already planning for the next year, let alone the ones in between. So, thank you for all the chamber brings to our community. Definitely a wonderful partnership and invaluable to our community.
And not to forget the Sustainable Lafayette for Earth Day.
And Sustainable Lafayette for Earth
Thank you for
Day.
our wonderful community members here doing great things for us. All right, so we have a motion and a second. We have a vote. All in favor? Aye. And any opposed? No. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you for putting all the work in this year. And we've got your back. We will be there with you to help out and do whatever you would like us to do. All right, and that is it. And we are going to adjourn. Thank you.